Hey everybody, I'm Marcy Marcusa, and this is Manitoba, making sense of your news in this province in 20 minutes. And there are some stories that you need to make sense of because you think to yourself, how did this possibly happen? And one of those stories happened to a Manitoba woman. A woman who has never been involved in the criminal justice system. So how did she end up shackled at one point, strip searched multiple times, and held in jail for a month? Now, all of this is because she missed taking doses of her tuberculosis medication. The mother of three, as I mentioned, with no criminal record, never charged with a crime, but Manitoba Public Health decided to incarcerate her instead of placing her in a hospital. Now, if you listen to the podcast and you know This is Manitoba is a selection of stories that we really dig into because I host the morning show at CBC. And so CBC I-Team's Caroline Barghout joined me in studio and she rolled out these incredible details. How did this happen?
Well, Geraldine Mason is 36 years old and she lives on God's Lake First Nation. She has 3 kids. She has a grandson. She first contracted tuberculosis 19 years ago, but she's had it twice since then. She actually doesn't know how she got it. Now, tuberculosis is a very serious illness and it affects mainly the lungs. Now, it could be deadly if it's not treated. But of course, there is antibiotics for it. The disease is spread through droplets, but it can be cured with consistent use of the antibiotics. Now, Mason once inadvertently gave tuberculosis to a couple of family members. Now, she didn't know that she had at the time. She regularly took her medication, but she admits sometimes she'd miss a dose here or there. Now, public health officials were really concerned that without treatment, if she didn't take treatment for too long, that her disease would become resistant to medication. So they got an order under the Public Health Act to actually send her to jail. And even though she wasn't contagious at the time, they got this order. So when she and her boyfriend came to Winnipeg in October for a dental appointment, she was picked up by Winnipeg police.
I don't know, I just said, how is this gonna work? Like, where are you guys gonna take me and how long am I gonna be, like, kept for? Because I thought it'd be just like a overnight kind of thing or even just a couple hours. I don't know, I didn't know what to think. I was scared.
Now, Mason says that Winnipeg police officers who had picked her up, they weren't even sure where to take her. So they ended up taking her to their police headquarters downtown.
What happened to her from there?
From there, she was actually strip searched. So she strip searched and then detained in a police holding cell. Then she was sent to the remand center where she was strip searched again. Now, remember, this is a woman who was not charged or convicted with a crime. In fact, she's never had any involvement with the criminal justice system. She stayed at the remand for about a week. And at one point, she needed to go to get a lung x-ray at HSC. So they shackled her and handcuffed her, took her there. When she was returned back to remand, she was strip searched again. Then remand got overcrowded, so they ended up sending her to Headingley or to the Women's Correctional Center, which is located in Headingley. She was strip searched for a 4th time there. In all, she spent a total of 32 days in jail. Leif Jensen is her legal aid lawyer.
I think it's important just to recognize what happened here. Manitoba felt it was important for her to take a pill once a day. That's fine. They locked her in a room for 24 hours a day in order to have someone watch her take a pill for 10 seconds a day. That's what happened here. And that was wildly excessive.
He says that public health officials had many other options and they did not have to send her to jail.
So let's walk through that. What other options did public health officials have?
So they could have ordered her to go to a hospital where she could take her medication, or they could have placed her in isolation somewhere, perhaps even in her community of God's Lake. They didn't have to order her to go to jail. Now, her original release date was actually January 27th, which meant she would have spent Christmas and New Year's in jail. Her lawyer filed an application to have her released. Then CBC asked to interview her in jail. Now, last Thursday, she was let out. That was a day before we were supposed to interview her. The Canadian Civil Liberties Association is now monitoring this case. Harini Sivalingam is the director of equality.
Detaining someone in prison in a general population who, to our knowledge, has no criminal history, has never been uncooperative at a hospital, is not contagious for public safety or public health reasons is deeply alarming. There is no justifiable reason for someone to be detained in a prison for purely public health reasons.
So here's part of the issue, is that Mason had to take her medication in front of health officials. So if she was busy, for example, or if she needed to do housework, she would try to delay when she would take the medication because it made her really nauseous. And if she took it before having a chance to do the things she needed to do, she didn't think she'd be able to do it. But sometimes by the time she'd be finished, it's after 5 p.m. Well, the nursing station is now closed. And if she doesn't take her medication in front of health officials, they assume that she didn't do it.
What happens now that she's now that she's out?
Well, Mason was super excited to get out of jail. She ended up spending a few nights here in Winnipeg before she can get a flight back home. She was supposed to go back this weekend. I hope that she did make it back. She's going to have to take her pills every day at 1:30. So what they're going to do this time is a health official is going to FaceTime her at 1:30 every day to make sure that she takes her pills. Now, why this wasn't an option before they decided to incarcerate her, that's really unclear. But it would have made life easier on her than having to go through this ordeal. Now, here's her lawyer, Leif Jensen, again.
In Canada, we really value liberty and individual freedom and civil rights, and these are so important, and it's really important that these things exist. And if we start chipping away at them, and if we start putting people in jail, which is the most serious thing we can do to someone for these sorts of reasons, then we're setting incredibly dangerous precedents.
How often does this happen?
We don't actually know. Provincial spokesperson said that they are rare, but they couldn't tell us exactly how often this happens every year because it's not centrally tracked. Now, they said that there's only a single case occurring within a calendar year. Sometimes there's no cases at all. We know of at least 2 other cases through media searches. We know in 2008, a Manitoba woman with tuberculosis was incarcerated in Winnipeg after she repeatedly ran away from the hospital for treatment. In 2011, another patient with tuberculosis was jailed. That time, the medical officer of health told the media that it happened between 5 and 10 times over the past few years. As for Geraldine Mason, she is really looking forward to being home with her kids.
I was lonely. I felt more lonely thinking I was going to spend Christmas in there, the holidays. I'm super excited. I can't even wait to get home. I'm going to go see my son and my grandson. Yeah. And my daughter. I'm so excited.
She really hopes that by telling her story, this will not happen to anyone else.
What a story it is.
It is, isn't it?
Thank you, Caroline. Yes.
Thanks.
Well, Caroline, as I mentioned, is a reporter with CBC's I-Team. If you have a story for the team, I just want to throw this out because you can email them directly. So it's the letter I, team@cbc.ca. And they have a confidential tip line as well if you connect with them. It is 204-788-3744, just in case you decide you want to reach out. Well, if the first story on the podcast today was all about something that you can't imagine how this happened, this story is also involving police, and you're about to hear the guest say that he is, quote, astonished at what he heard when we shared with him how much training police and RCMP in Canada get. So I just want to set this up for you because this is an interview that we are going to hear because there's questions that are being raised in this province about how police use force when dealing with different crisis situations. One of the situations was a Nunavut man who was shot dead during a confrontation with Winnipeg police in Unicity. So that's in the city of Winnipeg here. And then a 17-year-old boy was killed by RCMP in Norway House. Manitoba's police watchdog, by the way, the IIU, the Independent Investigation Unit, is investigating both of those cases. So that's the context, because we wanted to learn about training that police get in other places in the world compared to here. So here's what happens in our province. In Winnipeg, candidates with a grade 12 education can become constables after 36 weeks of training. RCMP have similar requirements. They go through 26 weeks of a cadet training course. Then they have 6 months of field coaching. Now, some experts are pointing to Nordic countries. They say they have, quote, exemplary police training models. In Norway, students go through, wait for it, 3 years of training. Also, officers don't carry weapons. They focus on communication and de-escalation. Now, Rune Glomset is an associate professor emeritus with the Norwegian Police University College, but he is also a former police officer, and he specializes in police leadership.
Good morning to you from Norway.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for asking me.
Can you tell us how the 3-year training in Norway program works? Like, what are the basics of it?
It's divided into 3 parts. The first year, they study at Police University College, a lot of subjects of policing, law, and so on. The second year, they are out in practice, and they have a coach that are following them working in the patrol. And the third year, they're back at the University College, and they're working more to understand more and get more knowledge. And they also use time to write their bachelor degree. Yes. So in Norway, it's in fact the police union that was the main force behind expanding this police education. In my time, we had 2 years, 1 year in the police academy and 1 year in practice. But the union, they wanted more and better education, like the nurses and the teachers.
I'm just really curious, especially given that you teach, but then also you previously were an officer. What's your reaction to hearing that someone here can become a constable after 36 weeks of training?
I'm a bit astonished. It's 2025 soon, and it tells me something about how one look at the work as police officers do and the role in society. So I was also asked some years ago after the killings of George Floyd, and the same thing is in fact happening in USA. They have very short police education.
Given that it was also asked for the expansion of your program in Norway, it was the police union, you said, that led the call for the ask. Why would officers, or how do you think officers benefit from that extended training in your country?
They get more competence, and they get more training, and they are more suited to do the kind of tough work in the streets. So it has even been discussed if we should increase the education till 4 years. So and we also at the University College, we have 2 or maybe 3 master's degree in different subjects in police science.
What is the philosophy when it comes to de-escalation? And if you can sort of help us understand why it was developed in that way?
I think it was in about 2015. There was 2 teachers in arresting techniques that wrote a book, and they came up with the power pyramid, and that power pyramid is some kind of both a pedagogical and practical tool used in education and training of police officers. And it starts with presence of the police in different places, and then it's verbal communication, and then it's go up to use of firearms. And this is very much used in the education and also in the annual training for the police officers. And I talked to one police leader earlier this morning, and he told me that this model also gives some kind of safety or security for the police officers when they are going to choose what kind of means of action. So it is said that you always has to try to use the most least serious means before you get up.
Are officers required to carry a firearm?
No, but the Norwegian police has firearms locked inside the vehicles, and they have to get permission to use it. But we have had for several years now a huge discussion if we should have permanent weapon on every operational officers. So I think maybe next year or the year after we will have a permanent weapon on every operational officer in Norway because of the situations in the streets, the development of the crime and so on.
I was going to ask you that. What's led to the call for officers to potentially be carrying weapons? Yeah.
So it's to be suited to do the work and avoid damage on the public.
How do police in Norway respond to people in crisis and maybe who may be struggling with mental health struggles specifically?
They have training at the University College. They use both lectures and also they have cases, and then it's people from the healthcare who are specialists who tells them how to understand this kind of mental diseases and how people react when they have it. And they also train in how to meet and handle them. And when there is a situation in practice, operational, they always try to start with a conversation, and they use time and distance to not start using hard means like firearms. And after every situation, they have briefings and they're discussing what was the situation, how did we choose to solve it, could we use another way to do less harm and so on. So it's high on the priority list within the Norwegian police.
I don't want to leave the impression, however, that that there aren't incidents where people do get shot. I think there is a case that you cite where someone ended up being shot in the leg. What happened there, and as it relates to our conversation, what were the discussions out of it?
It was a situation on last Saturday night in a small town outside Oslo, our capital. And the police were called to a house, and it was said it was some kind of health call. So in my reading of it, I just read it in the newspaper. It was a person with mental health problems that the health service wanted police to come. And when they came to the house, he threatened the police with weapons. So they tried to talk to him, and the talking and keeping the distance stayed for 8 hours. But then he went against the police, and they had to shoot him, and they shot him in one of the legs, not to harm him too much, and that solved the case.
Do you think that
and of course our police watchdog will investigate that case?
How well prepared do you feel the police officers in Norway are to handle some of the mental health calls?
I would think that they are pretty good prepared, and that is also the impression I got when I spoke to several police leaders some days ago. So they say that Norwegian police officers are very well prepared to meet those situations, and it is very challenging situations, of course.
How does an unarmed officer, I'm just curious, deal with a person who might have a knife then?
And we have pepper spray and also have telescope batons. So that is some kind of means that we can use, but they are trying to talk but if that doesn't work, then they use the pepper spray or the electroshock weapon. That was also possible. So they are in a way armed to carry out that kind of situations.
How do you feel about the fact that there's a call now for officers to carry guns where you are? I'm just curious what your thinking is there, given we've been talking about your deep history, the calls to even increase education, but that will be how much? What are you thinking about that?
My personal view has been that the Norwegian police should be unarmed, but I have changed my mind. The situation, the crime is getting way more tough, so the police has to be prepared, and they don't have the time to get a permission and lock up the locked box in the car. So I think it's reasonable now that the Norwegian police are going to be armed.
What do you think Manitoba might learn from how Norway police are, how your system works and how the training works?
I would focus on recruitment. What kind of people are you letting in to the police, and what kind of people do you don't want to have there? That is one thing. And then I would say that education, you should discuss how to increase the education like it is in Finland and Norway. I think a very thorough education is important. And I would also recommend that the police in your country have annual training programs where people has to go through operational and tactical and guns and so on, and also has to pass a test like we do in Norway. So we have, for some officers, operational officers, they have at least 48 hours of training yearly, and the other group has more than 100 hours yearly training. And also I would recommend that you formalize briefings in every police district, and it's very important to focus on leadership. The leaders, they shape the culture, they can be role models and so on. So recruitment, education, annual trainings, and leadership, that is very important. And maybe you should make your own power pyramid. That is a very necessary tool here in Norway.
Thank you very much. You've given us so much to think about here, and we're just awaiting actually still the announcement of who our new police chief in Winnipeg at least is going to be. So appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
So that's Rune Glomset, Associate Professor Emeritus at the Norwegian Police University College and a former police officer. I don't know about you, but after listening to all of that, both of those interviews, I'm just left with so many more questions in a way, and things that we need to learn more about here in Manitoba to improve things in our province. There's so many questions. So we'll answer those. We'll ask those in upcoming episodes of This is Manitoba. And if you're a follower of the podcast, thank you. If you are not yet, please follow and share. There's lots more to cover.